Welcome to today's 5-minute Bible study in the book of Deuteronomy. Today we're beginning to look at Deuteronomy chapter 31. Moses has essentially concluded his address to the children of Israel. All that he wanted to say to them, he has said, preparing them to cross over the Jordan and take possession of the promised land. Now he's sort of wrapping things up, and what he does in chapter 31 is he appoints and commissions the new leader. The days of Moses' pilgrimage on this earth are almost over. He knows that he will not be the one to lead the children of Israel into the promised land. That will fall to another. And so he wants to pass on the reins of leadership to the new person, of course, that is Joshua. So notice how Moses does this. We'll begin reading at verse 1 of chapter 31. So Moses went out and he spoke these words to Israel. He said, I am now 120 years old, and I am no longer able to lead you. The Lord has said to me, you shall not cross the Jordan. But the Lord your God himself, he will cross over ahead of you. He will destroy these nations before you, and you will take possession of their land. Now, the people know that Moses is not going to lead them across the Jordan River. They know that, but yet it's still hard to hear. And these Israelites, Moses is the only leader they have ever known. For all these years, he has led them. 40 years ago, he brought them out of Egypt by the power of God's mighty hand, delivered them from slavery. Now, of course, that first generation has now passed away during the 40 years in the wilderness. And all these Israelites are now those who have been raised, who were either born or been raised to adulthood in the wilderness. Moses is the only leader they have ever known. Moses reminds them, though, God is really your leader. I'm just the servant. God has used me, and he will also use Joshua. So don't be afraid. Don't be discouraged. God will go ahead of you, and he will give you possession of the promised land. Joshua will take over the leadership. He will also be the servant of the Lord, as I have been. Follow Joshua as you have followed me, because we are both servants of the Lord, who is taking you into the land of promise. Now notice how Moses commissions Joshua in verse 7. He says, So Moses summoned Joshua and said to him in the presence of all of Israel, Be strong, be courageous, for you must go with this people into the land that the Lord swore to their ancestors to give them, and you must divide it among them as their inheritance. The Lord himself goes before you. He will be with you. He will never leave you. He will never forsake you. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. Notice that Moses says this to Joshua in the presence of all the people, that they may hear the words and that they may know that Moses has commissioned Joshua under the instruction of the Lord to be their leader, to take them into possession of the land. It's done in a public way, public commissioning, a public consecration, that the people may know Joshua will do the will of the Lord as Moses has done it. Now, of course, there could be a little trembling in Joshua's heart as well. He's been an assistant and lieutenant to Moses many years, but now to take the mantle of leadership is a difficult thing. And so Moses says, Be courageous, Joshua. Don't be afraid. God himself will be with you. As he has been with me, he will be with you. He will go before you. He will lead you into possession of the land. You can count on the Lord. He'll never leave you. He'll never forsake you. Under his power, you will come into possession of the promised land. You will lead in this way, Joshua, and then you will divide the land among the people. The inheritance belongs to Israel. But Moses says to Joshua, you are the ones who will parcel out the land to each tribe as they come into their inheritance. It's a great job, a great mission, a great task for Joshua. But he's commissioned by the Lord through Moses to do it. It's done in a public way so that all the people might know, as God was with Moses, so he will be with Joshua. God himself will lead us into the land, and we will come into possession of our inheritance. God's promises are always fulfilled. You know, human leaders change. They do. Human leaders change, but God always fulfills his promises. He raises up people like Moses, people like Joshua to lead his children. And through them, God always fulfills his promise. So Joshua is appointed. He will be the next leader. They will come into possession of the promised land. God will fulfill all of his promises to his people. Amen and amen. Join us tomorrow as we continue our 5-minute Bible study in the book of Deuteronomy.